My 16-year-old son's teen girlfriend claimed she was pregnant with his baby and demanded we uproot our entire family to move to Colorado. But I found evidence she was lying about due dates. Hi, I'm Maria, 32F, and I need advice about a situation with my son Caleb, 16M, and his girlfriend Emma, 15F. My husband Tom, 34M, and I have been together since we were teenagers ourselves. We have 4 kids total, Caleb, plus Lucy, 12F, Sam, 9M, and baby Rose, 3F. Tom and I know what it's like to be young parents. We had Caleb when I was 16 and Tom was 18. Those early years were brutal. We lived in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. Tom worked 2 jobs while I finished high school with a screaming baby. We ate ramen noodles for months. Our families barely spoke to us. We missed out on everything normal teenagers do. But we made it work through pure determination. I got my GED, then went to community college for nursing. Tom learned plumbing through an apprenticeship. We saved every penny. By the time Lucy came along 6 years later, we had our own house in Riverside Heights. Now we own a 4-bedroom home with a big backyard. Tom runs his own plumbing business. I work at the regional medical center. The kids are in good schools. Caleb plays varsity baseball. Lucy does gymnastics. Sam has his soccer team. Rose goes to a nice daycare. We worked our butts off to build this life. Our house sits on Maple Street in the best neighborhood we could afford. The kids have friends here. Tom and I have friends here. This is our home. Caleb and Emma have known each other since they were 8 years old. Her family lived 4 houses down from us. Emma's parents are David and Carol. David works in construction. Carol does something with insurance. They have 3 kids, Emma, her older brother Mark, 17M, and younger sister Beth, 13F. Nice enough people, though we never hung out much beyond neighborhood barbecues and school events. The problem started 2 years ago when Emma's family moved to Colorado. David lost his job during some company downsizing. Carol found a better position with her insurance company in Denver. Housing costs were supposedly cheaper there too. Emma was devastated to leave Caleb. She cried for weeks before the move. Since then, Caleb has been obsessed with following Emma to Colorado. He brings it up constantly. He researches housing prices in Denver. He prints out job listings for Tom. He makes spreadsheets comparing cost of living. He shows us photos of schools near Emma's house. Every conversation turns into him trying to convince us that Colorado is better than here. I understand teenage love feels intense. Tom and I were teens once too. But Caleb doesn't grasp what moving means for a family of 6. He doesn't think about Rose starting over in new daycare. He doesn't consider Lucy leaving her gymnastics team where she just made varsity. He doesn't care that Sam would miss his friends. He only sees Emma. The long-distance relationship has been rocky. Emma broke up with Caleb twice last year, once in March and again in August. Both times she started dating some guy named Connor from her new school. Both times Caleb was crushed. Both times she came back to him after a few weeks, claiming Connor wasn't right for her. Tom and I watched our son's mood swing wildly during these breakups. Caleb would barely eat. His grades slipped. He quit baseball temporarily in August. When Emma took him back each time, he acted like nothing happened. He never seemed to learn from these patterns. Emma's family visited us for Christmas this year. They arrived December 18th and stayed through January 5th. Emma stayed with her aunt who lives across town, but she spent every day at our house. The kids went to movies together. They hung out at the mall. Caleb was happier than I'd seen him in months. I made sure Caleb understood the rules during Emma's visit. No closed doors when she was over. No being alone in bedrooms. I wasn't naive about teenage hormones. Tom and I had been there ourselves. 2 weeks after Emma returned to Colorado, she called Caleb crying. She was pregnant. Caleb came to us immediately. He was shaking when he told us. Tom and I sat at our kitchen table and listened while Caleb explained that Emma took a home pregnancy test. Then another one. Both positive. Caleb demanded we start planning our move to Colorado right away. He said Emma needed him there. He said the baby needed its father. He pulled up his old spreadsheets about Denver housing costs. He started talking about which high school he'd attend there. I stopped him cold. I told him we weren't moving anywhere until we had proof this baby was his. I reminded him about Emma's history with Connor. I pointed out that her Christmas visit was only 2 weeks ago, which seemed awfully quick for pregnancy symptoms to show up. Caleb got defensive. He insisted Emma wouldn't lie about something this serious. He said she loved him and only him. He accused me of not trusting him. I explained that trust wasn't the issue. Facts were the issue. Emma had already left him twice for another boy. Pregnancy tests could be wrong. Even if she was pregnant, the timing needed to be verified. Tom backed me up. He reminded Caleb about our struggles as teen parents. He pointed out that we weren't equipped to support a teenage family financially while also raising 3 other kids. We needed proof before making any major decisions. Caleb called Emma crying after our conversation. Within an hour, Emma's mom Carol called me screaming. She said I was disgusting for demanding proof. She said Emma was devastated that I didn't believe her. She said I was trying to ruin their relationship. I stayed calm on the phone. I told Carol that as adults, we needed to handle this responsibly. I suggested Emma see a doctor for confirmation and dating of the pregnancy. I offered to pay for it. Carol hung up on me. The next few days were tense. Caleb barely spoke to Tom and me. He spent hours on the phone with Emma, whispering in his room. I could hear him crying some nights. Emma's father David called Tom directly. He said Emma was definitely pregnant and that Caleb needed to step up. Tom asked about getting medical confirmation. David said they didn't need to prove anything to us. He said if we really cared about Caleb, we'd support him instead of questioning Emma's honesty. This back and forth continued for weeks. Caleb grew more distant from our family. He stopped coming to Sunday dinners. He skipped Rose's birthday party to video call Emma instead. Lucy asked me why Caleb was always angry now. Emma's family started coaching Caleb on what to say to us. I could tell because his arguments suddenly became more sophisticated. He'd use phrases that didn't sound like him. He'd bring up legal terms about parental responsibility that no 16-year-old knows naturally. The situation reached a breaking point in February. Emma's family sent us an ultrasound photo via text. The image showed a baby, but the top portion with the medical details was cut off. A handwritten note on the back claimed the due date was September 15th. I stared at that photo for a long time. Something felt wrong about it. The quality was poor, like it had been photocopied multiple times. Most ultrasounds I'd seen from my nursing job were much clearer. The handwriting looked rushed. I called my friend Jennifer who works in the ultrasound department at our hospital. I showed her the photo without explaining the situation. She pointed out several red flags. The image quality was degraded. The measurements that should be visible were obscured. Professional ultrasounds always include detailed dating information that this one lacked. Jennifer suggested getting a fresh ultrasound from a local provider for accurate dating. I brought this idea to Tom. We agreed this was reasonable. When I suggested this to Caleb, he exploded. He accused me of calling Emma a liar. He said I was trying to sabotage his relationship. He threatened to move to Colorado without our permission when he turned 18. Emma's family refused the local ultrasound idea. Carol claimed their insurance wouldn't cover it. David said it was unnecessary since they already had proof. They kept pushing for us to commit to moving to Colorado before the baby arrived. This standoff continued through March and April. Caleb's relationship with the rest of us deteriorated further. He stopped participating in family activities. He ate dinner in his room most nights. Lucy started acting out at school because of the tension at home. Then our neighbor Mrs. Peterson mentioned something strange. She said her daughter Katie was friends with Emma on social media. Katie had seen old posts from Emma that seemed inconsistent with what we'd been told. I asked Katie to show me these posts. She pulled up Emma's Instagram account that apparently Emma had forgotten about. It was an older account with posts going back 2 years. Scrolling through the posts, I found photos from Emma's Christmas visit to our town. But I also found something else. Mixed in with her Christmas photos was a clear, unedited version of the same ultrasound image Emma's family had sent us. This digital version showed the full medical information at the top. The scan was dated March 8th. The gestational age was listed as 22 weeks and 4 days. I did the math multiple times to make sure I was right. A 22-week pregnancy in early March meant conception happened in late October. Emma's Christmas visit was in December. Caleb couldn't be the father. I screenshot everything before Emma might delete the posts. I saved the images to my phone. I printed copies. I made sure I had documented proof. But I didn't tell Caleb immediately. I wanted to be absolutely certain before destroying his world. I also worried about his mental state. He'd been fragile for months. Instead, I tried one more time to reach Emma's family reasonably. I called David and explained what I'd found. I offered to send him the screenshots. I suggested we could resolve this quietly without involving lawyers. David denied everything. He claimed the dates on the ultrasound were wrong due to irregular cycles. He said Emma's doctor had corrected the due date. He insisted Caleb was still the father and that we needed to step up. I asked to speak with Emma directly. David refused. He said Emma was too upset by our accusations to talk to us. Carol got on the phone and started yelling about how we were harassing their daughter. The conversation ended with Carol threatening to contact authorities about our harassment. I told her that was fine, since we had documentation of everything. Caleb overheard part of this phone call. He confronted me about what I'd found. I showed him the Instagram screenshots. I walked him through the dating math step by step. Caleb stared at the evidence for a long time. Then he went to his room and didn't come out for the rest of the day. The next morning, Caleb asked to talk to Tom and me together. He said he'd called Emma about the dating discrepancy. She'd gotten angry and accused him of not trusting her. She'd claimed her doctor made errors in the early scans. She'd refused to provide any medical records to verify her claims. Caleb said he was starting to have doubts but still wanted to believe Emma. He asked if there was any way to know for sure. I explained that paternity testing during pregnancy was possible but required Emma's cooperation. Since her family was refusing all medical verification, we'd have to wait until after the baby was born for court-ordered testing. Caleb asked what we should do in the meantime. Tom and I agreed we wouldn't be making any major life changes until paternity was established. No moving to Colorado. No financial commitments. No wedding planning. We'd wait for facts. This decision sent Emma's family into a frenzy. They started calling Caleb directly, bypassing Tom and me completely. They told him we were terrible parents for not supporting him. They said we were abandoning our grandchild. They promised to help him move to Colorado with or without our consent. Caleb was torn between believing Emma and trusting the evidence. Some days he'd side with us. Other days he'd pack his bags and threaten to leave. The whole house walked on eggshells around his moods. Lucy asked me why everyone was always fighting now. Sam started having nightmares. Rose cried more than usual. Our stable family life was falling apart over this situation. Tom and I decided we needed legal advice. We contacted a family attorney who specialized in paternity issues. She reviewed our documentation and gave us clear guidance. The lawyer explained that we couldn't force Emma to take a prenatal paternity test. We could petition for testing after the baby was born, but we'd need to wait until then. She advised us to document everything and avoid emotional confrontations that might be used against us later. Following the lawyer's advice, I drafted a formal email to Emma's parents. I stated our position clearly. We believed the ultrasound dating indicated Caleb wasn't the father. We were willing to pursue legal paternity testing after the birth. We would support Caleb appropriately once paternity was established, but we wouldn't be making life changes based on unverified claims. Emma's family never responded to that email. The silence told us everything we needed to know. This whole situation has consumed our family for months now. Caleb barely speaks to us. Emma's family has painted us as villains to everyone who will listen. Caleb's friends think we're heartless for not immediately supporting him. But Tom and I refuse to uproot our entire family based on lies. We've worked too hard to build our life here. We won't sacrifice Lucy's gymnastics career, Sam's friendships, and Rose's stability for a situation that doesn't add up. The worst part is watching Caleb struggle with this. He's caught between wanting to believe his girlfriend and seeing the evidence that she's lying. He's only 16 and doesn't have the life experience to navigate this manipulation. Tom and I are standing firm on our decision to wait for proof. But this stance is tearing our family apart day by day. Caleb resents us more each week. The other kids are suffering from the constant tension. I keep wondering if we're handling this right. Should we just move to Colorado to keep the peace? Should we force Caleb into counseling? Should we forbid him from contacting Emma until this gets sorted out? The due date according to Emma's family is September 15th. According to the real ultrasound dating, the baby should arrive sometime in August. One way or another, we'll have answers soon. Until then, we're stuck in this horrible limbo where our son hates us for refusing to believe his girlfriend's lies. Update 1. People have been messaging me asking for updates on the pregnancy situation with my son Caleb, 16M, and his girlfriend Emma, 15F. Unfortunately, things have gotten much worse since my original post. After I posted here, Tom, 34M, and I decided to try one more approach with Emma's family. We thought maybe if we offered a compromise, we could get somewhere. I called Emma's mom Carol and suggested Emma come visit us for a month during summer break. I offered to pay for her flight. I said she could stay in our guest room and we could all spend time together as a family. My real plan was to get Emma to a doctor here for proper prenatal care and accurate dating. But I presented it as wanting to support them and be involved in the pregnancy. Carol seemed interested at first. She said Emma missed Caleb terribly and would love to visit. We arranged for Emma to fly here on June 20th and stay until July 20th. I bought her plane ticket online and sent Carol the confirmation. During this planning period, Caleb's mood improved dramatically. He started eating family dinners again. He helped Tom with yard work. He even played catch with Sam in the backyard. Caleb was convinced this visit would prove Emma was telling the truth and that we'd all become one big happy family. The night before Emma's scheduled flight, she texted Caleb saying she couldn't come. She claimed her doctor said traveling was dangerous because she was high risk for early labor. She said her morning sickness was so severe that she could only keep down orange juice and crackers. Caleb was devastated. He called Emma crying and begging her to reconsider. She stuck to her story about doctor's orders. When Caleb asked for a note from her doctor, Emma got defensive and said we were being controlling. I knew this was the final proof that Emma was lying. No doctor would ground a healthy 15-year-old from air travel in her second trimester. The morning sickness excuse was ridiculous since most women feel better by that point. But Caleb wasn't ready to accept what this meant. He spent the next week researching pregnancy complications online, trying to find medical explanations for Emma's claims. He called me at work multiple times asking about high-risk pregnancies. Meanwhile, Emma's family started posting on social media about how we were harassing their daughter. Carol wrote a long Facebook post about unsupportive in-laws who abandon pregnant teenagers. She didn't mention us by name, but everyone in our old neighborhood knew who she meant. This social media campaign backfired when some of Caleb's friends started asking questions. Emma had been posting photos of herself at parties and outdoor events in Colorado. She looked perfectly healthy and active for someone supposedly confined to bed rest. Caleb's best friend Marcus showed him screenshots of Emma's recent posts. In one photo from a hiking trip, Emma was clearly visible in the background wearing a tight tank top. If she was really pregnant enough to be high risk, she would have been showing by then. Caleb confronted Emma about these photos. She claimed the pictures were old and that people were reposting them. When Caleb pointed out the date stamps, Emma accused him of stalking her social media and being jealous and controlling. This argument triggered another one of Emma's breakup threats. She told Caleb that if he didn't trust her, maybe they shouldn't be together. She said Connor from her school had been asking about her and that Connor would never question her like Caleb was doing. Caleb came to Tom and me after this fight. He was shaking and pale. He said Emma was threatening to break up with him and date Connor if we didn't stop asking for medical proof. Caleb begged us to just accept Emma's word so she wouldn't leave him. Tom and I explained that Emma was using manipulation tactics. We pointed out that threatening to date someone else wasn't how loving partners behave. We reminded Caleb that Emma had already left him twice for Connor before. Caleb defended Emma's threats as being driven by stress from the pregnancy. He said we were forcing her to choose between him and her relationship with her parents. He claimed we were making everything harder for everyone. The situation got worse when Emma's brother Mark started messaging Caleb directly. Mark told Caleb that their parents were considering cutting contact with our family permanently. He said Emma was so stressed by our demands that she was having pregnancy complications. Mark suggested that Caleb should move to Colorado immediately to protect Emma and the baby. He offered to help Caleb buy a bus ticket. He said Caleb could stay with their family until he turned 18 and could get his own apartment. When Caleb brought this idea to us, Tom lost his temper for the first time in months. He told Caleb that no 16-year-old was moving across the country to live with manipulative people. He said Caleb could visit Colorado when he turned 18 but wasn't leaving our house before then. Caleb accused Tom of trying to control his life. He said we didn't understand real love because we only cared about money and appearances. He said Emma and her family were the only ones who truly supported him. The argument escalated until Caleb stormed out of the house. He walked to his friend Marcus's place and stayed there overnight. Marcus's parents called us around 10 p.m. to let us know Caleb was safe but didn't want to come home. Tom and I drove over to get Caleb the next morning. Marcus's mom Linda invited us in for coffee while the boys talked upstairs. Linda mentioned that Marcus had been worried about Caleb's relationship with Emma for months. Linda said Marcus thought Emma was playing games with Caleb's emotions. Marcus had noticed that Emma only contacted Caleb when she was fighting with Connor. When things were good with Connor, Emma would barely respond to Caleb's messages. This pattern made sense when I thought about the timeline. Emma's breakups with Caleb had coincided with Connor being out of town or dating someone else. Emma seemed to use Caleb as a backup option when her preferred relationship wasn't available. Caleb came downstairs looking exhausted. He apologized for staying out all night. He said he was ready to come home but didn't want to discuss Emma anymore. We agreed to a temporary truce. Caleb would live at home normally and we wouldn't bring up the pregnancy unless he did. But we also made it clear that our position hadn't changed. No major decisions until paternity was proven. Over the next few weeks, Caleb seemed to pull back from Emma naturally. Their phone calls became shorter and less frequent. He stopped researching Colorado constantly. He rejoined his baseball team for summer league. I thought maybe Caleb was finally seeing the situation clearly. But then Emma called him with another crisis. She claimed Connor had been spreading rumors at her school that the baby was his. She said Connor was telling people that Emma had cheated on Caleb during her Christmas visit. Emma was supposedly devastated by these lies and needed Caleb to defend her honor. Caleb was furious about these alleged rumors. He wanted to call Connor directly and confront him. He demanded that Tom and I post something on social media defending Emma's character. Tom and I refused to get involved in teenage drama. We told Caleb that if Emma was really being slandered, her family could handle it locally. We weren't going to fight her battles from across the country. Caleb interpreted our refusal as proof that we didn't care about him or his relationship. He went back to barely speaking to us and spending all his free time on video calls with Emma. The summer dragged on with his pattern. Emma would create some crisis that required Caleb's attention. Caleb would get upset with us for not helping. We'd refuse to enable the drama. Caleb would sulk for days until the next crisis started the cycle over. By early August, I was exhausted from walking on eggshells around Caleb's moods. Lucy had started asking if we could send Caleb to live with Emma's family since he was making everyone miserable. Sam was spending more time at friends' houses to avoid the tension. Tom and I realized this situation was destroying our family regardless of whether Emma was actually pregnant. We needed resolution before school started in September. The supposed due date was getting closer, but Emma's family had stopped sending updates. Caleb was still insisting the baby was his, but even he seemed less certain than before. I started preparing for the possibility that Emma would actually have a baby in September. If she did, we'd immediately pursue legal paternity testing. If she didn't, we'd know the whole thing was a lie. Either way, this nightmare would be over soon. Our family couldn't survive many more months of this drama. Update 2: The truth finally came out, and it's somehow worse than I expected. 2 days after my last update, Caleb, 16M, got a call from his friend Marcus. Marcus said his cousin who lives in Colorado had seen something on social media that Caleb needed to know about. Marcus sent Caleb a screenshot from Instagram. It was Emma posting a photo of herself with Connor at some outdoor concert. Emma was obviously pregnant in the photo, probably about 6 or 7 months along based on how she looked. Connor had his arm around her waist and was kissing her cheek. The caption said something about enjoying their last date before becoming parents. Caleb stared at that photo for maybe 10 minutes without saying anything. Then he showed it to Tom, 34M, and me. The post was dated 3 days earlier, which meant it was current. Emma was clearly pregnant, but she was also clearly with Connor. The timeline finally made complete sense. Caleb called Emma immediately. She didn't answer. He called again and again until she finally picked up. I could hear her voice through the phone from across the room. Emma claimed the photo was fake. She said Connor had photoshopped it to make trouble for her. She insisted she was alone in Colorado and miserable without Caleb. She begged him not to believe what he was seeing. Caleb asked Emma to video call him right then to prove she wasn't with Connor. Emma said she couldn't because her phone camera was broken. When Caleb offered to call her on a different app, she said her internet was down. These excuses were getting ridiculous even for Caleb. He hung up on Emma and threw his phone across his room. The screen cracked against the wall. Over the next few hours, Caleb became quiet in a way that worried me. He wasn't angry or upset like usual. He just seemed empty. He sat in the backyard staring at nothing for most of the evening. The next morning, Caleb asked to speak with Tom and me privately. He said he'd been thinking all night about everything that had happened over the past 6 months. He said he finally understood that Emma had been lying to him. Caleb apologized for how he treated our family. He said he was sorry for threatening to move away. He admitted that he'd known something was wrong for weeks but had been too scared to face it. Tom told Caleb that admitting the truth took courage. I said we were proud of him for being strong enough to see what was really happening. Caleb asked what we should do next. Tom and I explained that we didn't need to do anything. Emma's lies would sort themselves out. Caleb just needed to focus on moving forward. But Emma wasn't finished with her games. 2 days later, she called Caleb sobbing. She claimed Connor had forced her to take that photo. She said he was threatening to hurt her if she didn't pretend they were together. She begged Caleb to come to Colorado and rescue her. Caleb was torn again. Part of him still wanted to believe Emma needed him. But he'd also seen too much evidence of her lies to fully trust her anymore. Tom and I advised Caleb to contact Emma's parents if he was really worried about her safety. If Connor was actually threatening Emma, her family should handle it through proper channels. Caleb called Emma's mom Carol. Carol claimed she didn't know anything about Connor threatening Emma. She said Emma had never mentioned feeling unsafe. She seemed confused about why Caleb was asking. This response confirmed that Emma's latest story was another lie. If Connor was really threatening her, her parents would know about it. Caleb confronted Emma about her mother's response. Emma got angry and accused Caleb of going behind her back. She said he was trying to get her in trouble with her parents. She hung up on him. That was the last conversation Caleb had with Emma for 2 weeks. During those quiet weeks, Caleb started acting more like himself again. He played baseball with Sam. He helped Lucy practice her gymnastics routines. He started coming to family dinners without being asked. Caleb even talked about making plans for his junior year of high school. He mentioned trying out for varsity baseball. He asked about taking advanced math classes. These were the first forward-looking conversations we'd had with him in months. Then Emma's aunt called our house. The aunt still lived in our town and had stayed neutral during all the drama. She said she needed to tell us something important. The aunt explained that Emma's family had been lying about more than just the pregnancy timing. Emma had never been pregnant at all. According to the aunt, Emma and Connor had broken up back in December, right before Emma's Christmas visit to our town. Emma had been trying to get Connor back ever since by making him jealous with stories about Caleb. The pregnancy was Emma's latest attempt to manipulate Connor into wanting her back. She'd been posting about being pregnant to make Connor think she'd moved on with Caleb. When Connor finally took the bait and started pursuing Emma again, she didn't know how to end the lie. The aunt said Emma's parents had been enabling the lies because they were embarrassed about their daughter's behavior. They'd gotten in too deep to back down without admitting they'd been lying for months. Caleb listened to this revelation without saying much. After the aunt left, he went for a long walk around the neighborhood by himself. When Caleb came home, he said he felt stupid for believing Emma for so long. Tom assured him that trusting people isn't stupid, even when they don't deserve it. Caleb said he was ready to block Emma's number and move on. He deleted all her photos from his phone. He removed her from his social media accounts. He asked us not to mention her name anymore. Emma tried contacting Caleb through various friends and family members over the next few days. She sent messages claiming the aunt was lying. She said she really was pregnant and that her aunt was jealous of her relationship with Caleb. Caleb didn't respond to any of these messages. He'd finally had enough of Emma's manipulation. Emma's brother Mark called Caleb one last time. Mark said Emma was having a mental breakdown because Caleb was ignoring her. He claimed Emma was threatening to hurt herself if Caleb didn't call her back. Caleb brought this call to Tom and me. We advised him that if Emma was really threatening self-harm, Mark should contact emergency services in Colorado. Mental health crises needed professional intervention, not teenage boyfriends. Caleb agreed and told Mark to call 911 if Emma was actually in danger. Mark hung up angry, and we never heard from Emma's family again. The drama finally ended as suddenly as it had started. Caleb went back to being a normal teenager. He focused on baseball and friends and preparing for junior year. Our family slowly healed from months of tension and conflict. Lucy stopped having behavioral problems at school. Sam's nightmares went away. Rose became her cheerful self again. Caleb never talked about Emma anymore. He started hanging out with different friends and seemed genuinely happier. He made the varsity baseball team for his junior year. Looking back, I'm glad Tom and I stood firm on demanding proof. If we'd moved to Colorado based on Emma's lies, we would have destroyed our family's stability for nothing. Caleb learned a hard lesson about manipulation and toxic relationships. Hopefully, this experience will help him recognize red flags in future relationships. Our family is stronger now than it was before this mess started. We know we can survive difficult situations by sticking together and refusing to make decisions based on lies. Update 3. This will be my final update on the Emma situation. A lot has happened since my last post, and I wanted to give everyone closure on how this all ended. About a month after Emma's aunt revealed the truth about the fake pregnancy, Caleb, 16M, started his junior year of high school. He seemed to be doing well. He made varsity baseball like he wanted. His grades were good. He'd been hanging out with a different group of friends who didn't know about the Emma drama. But apparently, Emma wasn't done trying to cause problems for our family. In late September, Caleb's friend Marcus got a message from someone claiming to be Emma's new boyfriend. This person said Emma had given birth to Caleb's baby and that Caleb was a deadbeat for abandoning them. The message included a photo of Emma holding a newborn baby. Marcus showed Caleb the message because he thought it was suspicious. The person messaging him wasn't Connor and didn't seem to know basic details about Caleb's life. Caleb brought the message to Tom, 34M, and me. We looked at the photo carefully. Emma was definitely holding a baby, but something seemed off about the picture quality. It looked like it might have been taken from someone else's social media and edited. I reverse searched the image on Google. It turned out to be a stock photo from a parenting website that had been cropped and edited to look like a personal picture. Caleb wasn't even surprised at this point. He'd become numb to Emma's lies. He told Marcus to block whoever was messaging him and didn't engage with the fake baby story at all. But Emma's games had consequences we didn't expect. Word of the fake baby message spread around Caleb's school. Some kids who didn't know the full story started whispering that Caleb had gotten someone pregnant and abandoned his child. Caleb's baseball coach heard these rumors and pulled him aside for a conversation. Coach Williams had known our family for years and wanted to hear Caleb's side of the story. Caleb explained the whole situation to his coach. Coach Williams was impressed by how Caleb handled the questioning and said he was proud of Caleb for staying focused on school and sports despite the drama. But the rumors bothered Caleb more than he let on. He started coming home from school earlier and spending less time with friends. He was worried that people thought badly of him. Tom and I decided to be proactive about addressing the rumors. We contacted Caleb's guidance counselor and explained the situation. The counselor agreed to speak with Caleb and help him develop strategies for dealing with gossip. The counselor also suggested that Caleb might benefit from talking to someone outside the family about what he'd been through. Caleb was resistant to this idea at first, but eventually agreed to meet with the school psychologist a few times. These conversations helped Caleb process what had happened with Emma. He started understanding how her behavior had been manipulated from the beginning. He realized that healthy relationships don't involve constant crises and drama. Meanwhile, we heard through neighborhood gossip that Emma's family was having their own problems. Emma's aunt mentioned that Emma and Connor had broken up again. Apparently, Connor had found out about Emma's lies to Caleb and didn't want to be involved with someone so manipulative. Emma had also been caught in several other lies at her school in Colorado. She'd told classmates that her family was wealthy when they were actually struggling financially. She'd claimed to have health problems that required special accommodations, but couldn't provide medical documentation. The aunt said Emma's parents were finally acknowledging that their daughter had serious issues with lying and attention-seeking behavior. They were supposedly looking into getting Emma professional help. I felt some sympathy for Emma's parents. Dealing with a teenager who lies compulsively must be exhausting. But I was also still angry about how they'd enabled Emma's lies and coached her on manipulating Caleb. As October progressed, the rumors at Caleb's school died down. Caleb's friend group solidified around kids who knew him well and didn't believe gossip. His grades stayed strong and he was excited about baseball season starting up again. Caleb also started showing interest in dating again, which surprised Tom and me. He asked about a girl in his chemistry class named Sophie. He wanted to invite her to homecoming but was nervous about how to approach her. Tom and I encouraged Caleb to take things slow with any new relationships. We talked about green flags versus red flags in dating. Caleb seemed to have learned from his experience with Emma and was approaching potential relationships with more maturity. Caleb did ask Sophie to homecoming, and she said yes. They went as friends rather than as an official couple, which seemed like a healthy approach. Sophie is a nice girl who plays soccer and wants to study engineering. She's nothing like Emma in terms of personality or behavior. The homecoming dance happened last weekend. Caleb had a great time and came home smiling for the first time in months. He talked about dancing with Sophie and hanging out with his friend group. He seemed like a normal, happy teenager again. Tom and I have been able to focus on our other kids again too. Lucy made the state gymnastics team. Sam scored his first goal in soccer this season. Rose is doing well in preschool and has made several friends. Our family dinner conversations have returned to normal topics like school projects and weekend plans instead of pregnancy drama and relationship crises. The house feels peaceful again. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we believed Emma's lies and moved to Colorado. We would have uprooted our entire family for nothing. Caleb would have learned that lying and manipulation work. Our other kids would have suffered for Emma's games. Standing firm on demanding proof was the right decision, even though it meant months of conflict with Caleb. Sometimes protecting your family means being the bad guy in the short term. Caleb seems to understand this now. He thanked Tom and me recently for not letting him make a huge mistake. He said he's grateful we didn't allow him to ruin his future for someone who didn't really love him. Emma hasn't tried to contact Caleb since the fake baby photo incident. Her family moved back to our state last month according to the aunt, but they settled in a different town about 2 hours away. I hope Emma gets the help she needs, but I'm relieved she's out of our lives. Caleb is doing really well now. His relationship with Tom and me is stronger than it was before this whole mess started. He's learned to value honesty and stability in ways that most 16-year-olds don't understand yet. The other kids have noticed the change in Caleb too. He's been more patient with Rose and actually helps her with puzzles now. He drives Lucy to gymnastics practice without complaining. He shoots hoops with Sam after school most days. Tom and I feel like we got our son back. The Caleb who was obsessed with Emma and willing to abandon his family was like a stranger to us. This Caleb, who's focused on school and family and real friendships, is the boy we raised. We never did find out if Emma was ever actually pregnant at some point or if the whole thing was fabricated from the start. Honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that Caleb learned to recognize manipulation and that our family stayed together. I know some people reading this might think we were too harsh with a 16-year-old boy in love. But sometimes being a parent means protecting your child from their own bad decisions, even when they hate you for it. Caleb will be 17 next month. He's already talking about college applications and what he wants to study. He mentioned staying close to home for school, which makes me happy, but I haven't pushed the idea. Sophie and Caleb are officially dating now, and she comes to our family dinners sometimes. She's respectful and kind to all of us. She asks Lucy about gymnastics and lets Rose show her drawings. She's what a healthy teenage relationship looks like. Our house on Maple Street feels like home again instead of a battlefield. Sunday dinners happen without anyone storming off. The kids laugh together watching movies. Tom and I can have conversations that aren't about managing Caleb's latest crisis. This experience taught our whole family that love sometimes means saying no. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon everyone else who cares about you. Real love doesn't require constant proof or dramatic gestures. Caleb understands this now in a way that will serve him well for the rest of his life. He'll never again mistake manipulation for love or crisis for romance. Emma's lies could have destroyed our family if we'd let them. Instead, they made us stronger and taught Caleb valuable lessons about character and integrity. I'm closing this chapter of our lives with gratitude that we all made it through intact. Our family of 6 is still together under one roof, and that's what matters most. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I found letters from Dad's secret girlfriend while cleaning his office. We confronted her and learned the shocking truth about his double life. I, 32F, lost my dad to lung cancer last November, and I'm still struggling to cope with his absence. My dad, Jonathan, was my rock, always there with advice, support, and his terrible dad jokes. We were incredibly close, especially after my mom left when I was 12. His death came so suddenly. He was diagnosed in August and gone by November. The speed of it all left me reeling. To understand why Dad's death hit me so hard, you need to know a bit about our family history. My parents, Jonathan and Marie, met in college. They were the classic opposites attract couple. Dad was steady and practical, Mom was artistic and free-spirited. They balanced each other out, or so I thought. I was born when they were in their early 30s, and my sister Rebecca came along 6 years later. We had a pretty typical suburban childhood: summer barbecues, family game nights, annual camping trips. Dad worked as an accountant, and Mom was a part-time art teacher. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. But when I was 12 and Rebecca was 18, Mom dropped a bombshell. She'd been offered a position with an art collective in New Mexico, and she was taking it, without us. I remember the night she told us. We were sitting at the dinner table, and she just blurted it out between bites of lasagna. Dad went pale, Rebecca started yelling, and I just sat there, unable to process what was happening. Mom left a week later. She said she needed to find herself and that she felt suffocated in our small town. She promised to call and visit, but those promises grew hollow over time. The calls became less frequent, the visits never materialized. By the time I was in high school, we were lucky to get a birthday card. Dad stepped up in a big way after Mom left. He learned to cook, with varying degrees of success, helped me with my homework, and tried his best to fill the gap Mom left behind. He started taking us on little adventures on the weekends, hiking trips, visits to museums, even an ill-fated attempt at skiing that left us all bruised but laughing. Rebecca dealt with Mom's departure differently. She threw herself into her studies and extracurriculars, spending less and less time at home. As soon as she graduated high school, she was off to college on the other side of the country. I understood her need to get away, but it felt like another abandonment. I, on the other hand, clung to Dad even more. I chose a local college so I could live at home, and even after graduating, I only moved a few blocks away. Dad and I had standing dinner dates every Sunday, and we talked on the phone almost daily. He was my parent, my friend, and my support system all rolled into one. That's why his cancer diagnosis hit me like a freight train. It was during one of our Sunday dinners. I noticed he seemed tired and was picking at his food. When I asked if he was okay, he told me about the doctor's appointment he'd had earlier that week. Stage 4 lung cancer. Inoperable. The next 3 months were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and late-night conversations. Dad tried to stay positive, cracking jokes even when he was hooked up to IVs. But I could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear I felt every time I looked at him. He deteriorated quickly. By October, he was in hospice care. I took a leave of absence from work to be with him as much as possible. Rebecca flew in from California, but she always seemed uncomfortable in the hospice room, making excuses to step out or run errands. Dad passed away on a quiet Tuesday morning in November. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. Rebecca was in the cafeteria, getting coffee. In his will, Dad left the house to Rebecca. I think he worried about her feeling disconnected from the family and thought this might give her a reason to visit more often. To my surprise, Rebecca decided to move back and live in the house. She invited me to stay with her while I figured out my next steps. At first, it seemed like a good arrangement. We hadn't lived together since we were teenagers, and I thought it might be a chance for us to reconnect. But our different ways of grieving soon caused friction. Which brings me to last week, Dad's birthday. He would have been 65. I took the day off work, planning to visit his grave and then have a quiet evening at home, maybe looking through old photo albums. When I got back from the cemetery, I found Rebecca hosting a dinner party. She had invited her friends over, and they were laughing and drinking in the living room where Dad's urn sits on the mantel. I was shocked. I stood in the doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. Rebecca spotted me and waved me over, saying, "Hey sis, come join us. We're celebrating Dad's life." I couldn't believe she was treating Dad's birthday like a festive occasion. It felt so wrong and disrespectful. I turned and went straight to my room, locking the door behind me. I could hear the party continue downstairs, people laughing and music playing. It was like a knife twisting in my chest. How could Rebecca do this? How could she act like everything was normal and fine when our dad was gone? After an hour, Rebecca knocked on my door. I didn't answer. She tried to talk to me through the door, saying she thought it would be nice to remember Dad in a positive way. I texted her that I couldn't believe she'd do this on his birthday, of all days. She replied that Dad wouldn't want us to be sad and that I needed to start moving on. I'm furious and heartbroken. Rebecca knows how much I'm struggling with Dad's death. This feels like a complete betrayal of his memory and my grief. Am I overreacting? Should I just accept that Rebecca grieves differently? Or do I have a right to be upset about this? Some additional background: Rebecca and I have always had different relationships with our parents. When Mom left, I was devastated and clung to Dad even more. Rebecca, being older, seemed to take it in stride and became very independent. She moved out at 18 for college and only came home for holidays after that. I stayed local for school and remained close to Dad. Rebecca also butted heads with Dad more as an adult. She didn't approve of some of his life choices, like continuing to smoke even after Mom left. They had some big arguments about it over the years. I always defended Dad, which caused some tension between Rebecca and me. I remember one particularly bad fight during Rebecca's senior year of college. She came home for Thanksgiving and caught Dad smoking in the backyard. She exploded, calling him selfish and irresponsible. Dad tried to calm her down, but she stormed off and spent the rest of the holiday with friends. I was left trying to salvage our Thanksgiving dinner, watching Dad push his food around his plate, his eyes sad and distant. Despite these conflicts, I know Rebecca loved Dad in her own way. She always made sure to call on his birthday and Father's Day, and she helped him set up his first smartphone so they could video chat. But sometimes I feel like she doesn't understand how much he meant to me. He was my constant, my safe place in a world that had already seen too much upheaval. Losing him has left this enormous hole in my life that I don't know how to fill. Every morning, I still reach for my phone to text him good morning. Every Sunday, I feel lost, not knowing what to do with the time I used to spend at our dinner dates. I've tried to maintain some of our traditions, watching old westerns on Saturday afternoons, attempting his famous chili recipe, but it just makes his absence more pronounced. I'm planning to move out soon. I've been looking at apartments, but the housing market here is tough. Now I feel like I need to speed up that process. I can't imagine staying here if Rebecca is going to be so callous about Dad's memory. Am I being unreasonable? Should I try to talk to Rebecca about this, or just focus on moving out as soon as possible? I feel so lost and alone without Dad, and now I feel like I'm losing my sister too. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. It really helped me gain some perspective on the situation with Rebecca. A week after the birthday incident, I finally worked up the courage to talk to Rebecca face to face. I explained how hurt I was by her actions and how it felt like she was disrespecting Dad's memory. To my surprise, Rebecca broke down in tears. She admitted that the party wasn't just about celebrating Dad's life, it was her way of distracting herself from her own grief. It turns out Rebecca has been struggling more than she let on. She confessed that she feels guilty about all the arguments she had with Dad over the years, especially about his smoking. She regrets not spending more time with him in his final months. The party was her misguided attempt to push away the pain and guilt she's been feeling. As we talked, Rebecca shared a memory that shed light on her complicated relationship with Dad. During her sophomore year of college, she'd been going through a rough patch, struggling with classes, a bad breakup, and feeling lost about her future. She'd called Dad in tears one night, and he'd driven 6 hours straight to surprise her on campus the next day. He spent the weekend with her, helping her study, making her laugh, and reminding her of her strengths. Rebecca said she'd never told me about this because she felt embarrassed about her breakdown, but it was a turning point in her relationship with Dad. This revelation changed things between us. We spent hours talking that night, sharing memories of Dad and discussing our different ways of coping. It didn't magically fix everything, but it was a start. We agreed to try and be more open with each other about our feelings and to respect each other's grieving process. However, just as Rebecca and I were beginning to understand each other better, another issue arose. Last week, I was cleaning out Dad's old office. Rebecca had asked me to help sort through his things, and I found some documents that left me reeling. Hidden in the back of Dad's filing cabinet was a folder containing letters and photos. As I looked through them, I realized they were from a woman named Linda. The letters spoke of a years-long relationship, with mentions of secret meetups and plans for the future. The most recent letter was dated just 2 months before Dad's diagnosis. I was stunned. Dad had been in a relationship for years, and he never told us. I showed the letters to Rebecca, and she was just as shocked as I was. We knew Dad had dated casually over the years, but nothing serious, or so we thought. As we pored over the letters and photos, we started to piece together a timeline. The earliest letter was dated about 5 years ago, not long after I had graduated college. There were photos of Dad and Linda at various locations, a beach I didn't recognize, a cozy-looking cabin, even one of them dressed up for what looked like a wedding. One letter in particular caught our attention. Linda wrote about a weekend they had spent together at a bed and breakfast in a nearby town. The date coincided with a weekend Dad had told us he was going on a fishing trip with some work buddies. I remember feeling hurt at the time that he hadn't invited me along, as we often went fishing together. Now, the truth of that weekend felt like a betrayal. The most recent letter was the hardest to read. In it, Linda talked about their plans for the future, retiring together, traveling the world. She mentioned looking at houses in Florida. It was clear that their relationship was serious, and that they had been making long-term plans together. Now, we're both grappling with this new information. It feels like a betrayal, like we didn't really know Dad as well as we thought we did. Why didn't he tell us about Linda? Was he planning to leave us for her? Did she know about his illness? I'm angry and hurt all over again. Just when I thought I was starting to come to terms with Dad's death, this revelation has reopened all those wounds. I keep thinking back to all the times Dad said he was working late or going on trips with friends. How many of those times was he actually with Linda? Rebecca is upset too, but she's dealing with it differently. She wants to track Linda down and get answers. She's been scouring social media and online directories, trying to find any trace of this woman who was such a big part of Dad's life. I'm not sure if tracking down Linda is a good idea. Part of me wants answers too, but another part is scared of what we might learn. What if Linda tells us things about Dad that change how we see him even more? What if she knew things about us that Dad shared with her? The thought makes me uncomfortable. This discovery has also brought up complicated feelings about Mom. I find myself wondering if Dad's relationship with Linda was some kind of karmic payback for Mom leaving us. Did he feel like he had to hide his relationship because of how Mom's departure affected me? Or was he just being selfish, wanting to keep his new life separate from his role as our father? I don't know how to process this. It feels like I'm losing Dad all over again, but this time I'm losing the image I had of him too. The Dad I thought I knew, the one who was always honest with me, who I could trust completely, feels like a stranger now. Rebecca and I are trying to support each other through this, but it's hard. We're both dealing with our own complex emotions, and sometimes it feels like we're speaking different languages when we try to talk about it. How do we move forward from here? Should we try to find Linda? Or is it better to let sleeping dogs lie? And how do we reconcile this new information with the memory of our dad? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. Despite my reservations, Rebecca decided to track down Linda. She found her on social media and reached out. To our surprise, Linda agreed to meet with us. We met Linda, 59F, at a small cafe last weekend. She was nothing like I had imagined. I had pictured someone younger, maybe flashy or intimidating. Instead, Linda was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She seemed genuinely emotional about Dad, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred her coffee. As we talked, we learned that their relationship was much more complicated than we had assumed. Linda and Dad had known each other since high school. They dated briefly back then but lost touch when they went to different colleges. They reconnected at their 30-year high school reunion, shortly after Mom left us. Linda shared some stories from their high school days. Apparently, Dad had been quite the prankster back then. She told us about a time when he had managed to fill the principal's car with packing peanuts as a senior prank. It was strange hearing about this mischievous side of Dad, so different from the serious, responsible father we knew. Their reunion came at a difficult time for both of them. Linda had recently divorced her husband of 25 years after discovering his infidelity. Dad, of course, was dealing with the aftermath of Mom's departure. They started as friends, supporting each other through their respective life changes, but over time, it developed into something more. The reason Dad never told us about Linda was because of me. Apparently, he was worried about how I would react to him dating seriously. He knew how hard Mom's departure had hit me and didn't want me to feel like he was trying to replace her. Linda understood and agreed to keep their relationship private until I was ready. This revelation hit me hard. I felt guilty for being the reason Dad felt he couldn't be open about his relationship, and angry that he had assumed I couldn't handle it. I remembered all the times I'd complained to Dad about feeling lonely or wishing he would start dating again. Had he been silently carrying the weight of his secret relationship all that time? Rebecca, on the other hand, was furious that Dad had kept this from both of us for so long. She pointed out that I was an adult, fully capable of dealing with Dad dating. She felt that Dad had underestimated both of us and robbed us of the chance to know an important part of his life. Linda also shared that she knew about Dad's illness. She was there for him throughout his treatment, visiting him in the hospital when we weren't around. She showed us pictures on her phone. Dad looked happy in them, despite his condition. There was one photo that particularly struck me, Dad in his hospital bed, Linda sitting beside him, both of them laughing at something off camera. It was strange seeing this side of Dad's life that we knew nothing about. We learned that Dad had planned to tell us about Linda after his first round of treatment. He had hoped that once he started getting better, he could introduce Linda to us properly. But as his condition worsened, he became more hesitant, not wanting to add any stress to an already difficult situation. Linda told us about their last conversation, just days before Dad passed away. He had made her promise to reach out to us after some time had passed. He wanted us to know about her, about the happiness she had brought to his life. Linda had been respecting his wishes by giving us time to grieve before making contact. The meeting with Linda left us with mixed emotions. On one hand, it was comforting to know that Dad had someone who cared for him so deeply in his final years. Linda's story showed us a side of Dad we hadn't known, a man capable of romance and spontaneity, who had found love again after heartbreak. On the other hand, it highlighted how much of Dad's life we didn't know about. It was difficult to reconcile the image of our dad, the steady, somewhat predictable man we knew, with this person who had been living a sort of double life. Rebecca and I are still processing all of this. We've had some heated discussions about whether Dad was right to keep this from us. Rebecca feels betrayed, arguing that we had a right to know about such an important part of Dad's life. She's angry that we missed out on years of knowing Linda and seeing Dad happy in his relationship. I'm torn between understanding Dad's motives and feeling hurt by the deception. Part of me can see why Dad might have hesitated to tell us, especially given how I struggled with Mom's departure. But another part feels like he didn't trust us enough to handle the truth. We're also unsure about how to proceed with Linda. She expressed a desire to stay in touch, saying she feels connected to us through Dad. She offered to share more stories and photos from their time together. Part of me wants to embrace this connection to Dad's life, to learn more about the man he was when he wasn't being our father. But another part feels like it's too much to handle right now. Rebecca seems more open to maintaining a relationship with Linda. She's already made plans to meet Linda for coffee next week. I'm more hesitant, still trying to reconcile my feelings about this whole situation. How do we move forward from here? Should we maintain a relationship with Linda? And how do we reconcile this new information with the memory of our dad? Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. After much soul-searching and many discussions with Rebecca, we decided to cautiously maintain a relationship with Linda. It hasn't been easy, but it's been enlightening in many ways. Through our conversations with Linda, we've learned so much more about Dad, stories from his youth, his dreams, and even his regrets. It's like we're getting to know a whole new side of him. Linda has shared photos and mementos from their time together, which have been both painful and precious to see. One particularly emotional moment came when Linda gave us letters Dad had written to her during his illness. In them, he expressed his love for Rebecca and me, his regrets about not being more open with us, and his hopes for our futures. Reading these letters was incredibly difficult, but also healing in a way. It felt like getting one last message from Dad. Linda told us about a conversation she had with Dad near the end. He had expressed regret about not telling us about their relationship sooner. He worried that he had made a mistake in trying to protect us, and that by keeping Linda a secret, he had inadvertently created a divide between his dad life and his personal life. Rebecca and I have grown closer through this experience. We've had to lean on each other as we navigate this complex situation. We've had our arguments and disagreements, but we're learning to understand and respect each other's perspectives and ways of grieving. I've finally moved out of Rebecca's house and into my own apartment. It was a big step, but it felt necessary for my healing process. Rebecca and I still see each other regularly, often meeting up with Linda for coffee or dinner. Linda has become an unexpected source of comfort for both of us. She doesn't try to replace Dad or our mom, but she offers a unique perspective on Dad's life that we never had before. It's strange, but in a way, maintaining this connection with her helps us feel connected to Dad. We've also started a small tradition of our own. On the anniversary of Dad's passing last month, instead of a party or a somber remembrance, we had a quiet dinner, just Rebecca, Linda, and me. We shared stories about Dad, laughed at his terrible jokes, and yes, shed some tears too. It felt right, a balance between honoring his memory and celebrating his life. I won't say that everything is perfect now. We still have our difficult days. Sometimes seeing Linda brings up complicated emotions. There are moments when I feel a pang of jealousy, thinking about the time Linda had with Dad that we missed out on. But overall, I feel like we're in a better place. Dad's death and the revelations that followed have changed us all. But through it all, I've learned that love, even with its complications and imperfections, is what endures. And in that, I find some peace.